Well, hey there, campers, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Camp Cryptid. I'm your host, Erica Fett, and I can't believe it's already December. I am like, where did this year go? 2024 has just blown by. It seems like it was just like January. But I guess that's, what happens when you get older. Time just starts flying when you're having fun, I guess, right? But I'd like to say thanks so much for everyone for tuning in to the last episode that was all about this creepy little crawly cryptid, the Jabafofi, that giant man-eating spider out of the Congo, which is honestly one of my favorite cryptids. And I know I say it like every single cryptid is my favorite, but I really like this one. But so thanks so much for everybody who chimed in with comments or your own little stories about creepy spiders and your arachnophobia. It was really fun to kind of bond over this giant spider. So thanks so much. Now, in between the last episode and this episode, I did have the absolute pleasure of attending CryptidCon 2 weekends ago in Kentucky. And it was full of amazing vendors, lots of guests, and I got to catch up with a lot of amazing people. And it was such a lovely time. There were tons of podcasts there, so many people that create nice little trinkets for the cryptid community, whether it's plushies or some hot sauce. I'm addicted to my Cryptid Comfort Squonkapalooza sauce, and they had a hot sauce, so I had to get it. But it was an amazing time, and it was just so fun to get to catch up with the community, not only people that were there working the booths, but people who were there visiting and enjoying and just walking around the convention, which was a great time. And as I had people coming up to my booth chatting with me about stories or encounters they had, it made me realize that having a safe space where people can share their stories and actually feel accepted and validated is actually so important, especially when it comes to cryptids and paranormal stuff. Now, with that being said, my patrons did choose this episode. So with that being said, they did a great job picking it out, as always. And this episode will be dedicated to talking about cryptids that actually turned out to be real. So talking to some of you at CryptidCon and then having my patrons choose this episode, it kind of was like, okay, well, let's talk about more cryptids then, I guess. I mean, we are Camp Cryptid, right? But most of you listening probably know by now what a cryptid is, right? But for some of you that may be tuning in and thinking, well, what is this wild child talking about? Cryptids are just animals that are thought to exist or theorized to exist, but aren't actually necessarily proven by science to exist yet. And when people think about cryptids, they think about Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster or the Mothman. But there are tons of stories of actual animals that were once on the cryptid list before their existence was actually proven years later. Now, there's a giant list of cryptids from all over the world that range in size from big to small. And luckily, we are still finding new species on this planet year after year. But with that being said, here's a list of some of my favorite cryptids that actually turned out to be real. Now, the first one I'm going to get into today is actually the giant squid. Now, I talked about this one a bit in my Sea Creatures episodes a few months back, and I think I've talked about it like a million times because the ocean is one of my absolute favorite topics to talk about. But legends of a giant squid roaming the oceans were just sailors' tales from years and years and years of legends about the Kraken. There were many instances over time of eyewitness accounts or large carcasses that ended up washing up on beaches that gave hints to there being something bigger lurking in the ocean. But nothing alive was ever proven. But that was until 2004, when a giant squid was actually photographed alive in the ocean. So it wasn't until like 20 years ago, which is not a long time, that was the first time a giant squid was actually photographed alive. So that just showed us that, yes, giant squids are absolutely real. Colossal squids are real. And the only question left was, well, how big was the biggest one lurking in the ocean? So now that we know that they exist, right, it is pretty cool to know that maybe some of these sailors' tales from years and years and years ago, hundreds of years ago, weren't maybe just sailors' tales, but they were actually cautionary tales of an actual giant squid lurking. Now, the crazy thing is yes, now we know that they exist, but we do still have this mystery of how big is the biggest one out there in the ocean right now, which is still going to be a mystery. But hopefully with more ocean conservation and exploration, one of these days we may be able to get the answer. Now, another one of the animals that is actually proven to exist that was once on the cryptid list is a platypus. And for me, this one is special because of my love for the Thai Beanie Babies growing up in the 90s. Patty the platypus, holler. We love our Beanie Babies, right? Actually, side note, my parents just moved from Ohio to Alabama, and they brought me 2 giant bins of all my Beanie Babies. I'm like, what am I going to do with these? These were supposed to be my college fund right here, right? They were supposed to get me through college with how much they were selling for. But nope, here in 2024, I still have 600 Beanie Babies, and they're just sitting in plastic totes. But back to Patty the platypus. This is a cute and cool little creature. I tell you, the platypus has been one of my favorites for like ever now. I love the platypus. But the crazy thing is the platypus was once thought to be a hoax. I mean, think about it. I mean, surely there was no way that a mammal could lay eggs and have a duck bill and have a beaver tail and produce venom. But sure enough, that platypus proved him wrong. But thankfully, this cute little creature was actually proven to exist, and it shows how truly diverse and strange nature can be. Now, next up on the list is probably one that you would not think that would be a cryptid at one point, but it definitely was, and that is the gorilla. Now, this gorilla was once a cryptid. It was once on the cryptid list, and it was deep in the jungles of Africa where stories of people being kidnapped or taken and thrown from trees, or even worse, crushed. I mean, it surrounded this legendary creature. And so when explorers came into the region, all they were told of was these crazy stories about this giant man-ape, this hairy man-ape that was lurking in the jungle. But this creature's strength, mixed with his agility and ferocious nature, was something that the locals warned all of these explorers of the region about. But the stories written about sightings or passed down from person to person that were once thought to be myth were actually proven when everyone gazed upon the sight of the gorilla. I mean, we all know the gorilla exists right now, right? Like in present day, it seems kind of like, wow, how could someone not think a gorilla could exist? But what's amazing is even when I saw one for the first time in captivity, I was stunned. I mean, I can only imagine how exhilarating seeing a gorilla in their actual habitat in the wilderness would be. I mean, I see videos online of people out in wilderness, and just seeing how majestic they are is just amazing. And this is the thing, is my love for gorillas may also fuel my love for Bigfoot. So maybe that's what's really causing this. But no, for real, like we all have seen gorillas. And if you've gone anywhere where they're held in captivity, you can see how amazing these creatures could be. I mean, could you imagine placing yourself back in time to where there was these stories of these giant ape men that were just so strong and ferocious, just lurking in the jungle. And then you go in the jungle and you see one and you're like, what? Oh gosh, exploration must have been real fun back then. But yeah, the gorilla was once a cryptid. Now, some other animals that were once on the cryptid list are the African unicorn. And if you aren't sure what the African unicorn is, well, it's just the okapi. The okapi is a creature that people believed was a myth. And when describing the okapi, people would say it was like a mix between a giraffe and a zebra. And people were like, what? But yes, this adorable little creature is in fact real, and it is so cute. And in fact, the okapi has a World Okapi Day, which is October 18th of every year. And it's to raise awareness and protect the ecosystem due to deforestation and poaching. So the okapi, this cute little giraffe relative, was once actually a cryptid. So that's really, really cool. Another one that's on the list, the kangaroo. I mean, think about it. People were like, let's jumping around 25 feet high. And they were like, no, there's no way. But nope, kangaroo was also once on the cryptid list. So now we've got what? The giant squid. We've got gorillas. We've got the platypus. We've got the okapi. We've got kangaroos. Now, last but not least on this little list of these crazy animals that were once on the cryptid list is probably one of my favorites, the Komodo dragon. And I had to save it for last because, first off, I love lizards, turtles, frogs. And well, if I could have pet alligators, I totally would. I want iguana so bad. Like, I love giant lizards and I want one so bad. And my husband is not a lizard person at all. He's like, no. In fact, when he sees snakes around the house, he comes in and gets me. He's like, Ari, there's a snake. And I'm like, yes. However, as much as I love giant lizards, these little things are so, no, well, I shouldn't say little because these things are not, these are anything but little. But Komodo dragons are so gnarly and scary. I mean, talk about an apex predator, a real life dinosaur. I mean, these things are so cool. And they were once also on the cryptid list. So I think that that is so cool. And that's why I wanted to do this episode too. I was so excited when patrons picked it out because I was like, this will be really good because a lot of people, when they're thinking of like cryptids, they think, oh, Bigfoot, Mothman, they don't think about actual animals that at one point were just stories or legends and myths that people thought existed or saw, and people just dismissed it or said, I'm not going to believe that until we have an actual scientist look at it, right? But people in these areas were talking about these animals far long before actual science proved them to be real. So there's that. But back to the Komodo dragon. Now, think about back in the day when they first saw this, when someone told stories about a giant 10-foot, 300-pound lizard that not only takes down like giant prey the size of cattle or buffalo or large mammals by sprinting like 12 to 13 miles per hour, ambushing its prey. But the crazy thing is the Komodo dragon actually cannibalizes its own. So people were probably like, when they heard these stories about this giant lizard that does all of these things, they were like, oh, so a dinosaur actually exists on this island. Okay, cool. But yeah, these large, awesome lizards were once on the cryptid list. And it almost makes you wonder if other sightings of large lizards or dinosaur-like creatures like the Mekele Bembe could actually be out there, which is so crazy to think about. But yeah, the Komodo dragon is also on that list of cryptids, which I think is so cool. And, I think there's a couple more that I didn't get into. But yeah, those are some of my favorites that were on the list of once cryptids, but are actually proven to exist, which I think is really cool. You've got a lot of a diversity within these little animals. So I think that that's really neat. But it's pretty crazy to think that these animals would once be considered cryptids. I mean, in present times, the gorilla and the Komodo dragon or even the kangaroo seem so normal. But if you put yourself in that time period, some of these sightings from before like the 1400s, and if you just put yourself in that mindset, is you're sailing the ocean, exploring the new vast world, and then you see a giant 10-foot lizard or a giant ape man that's covered in hair. Could you imagine? That had to be such an adventure back in the day. And to think about how much of the world we still have left to explore, whether it's deep in the forests or jungles of Earth or in the deepest parts of the ocean, there are still so many more creatures to learn about and prove that they exist. And the harder it is for humans to get to the area to explore, the harder it is to find the evidence of these new species. Now, take, for example, we're talking Bigfoot, and everyone knows the famous Bigfoot video, right, from Patterson-Gimlin. And if you think about how hard it was to get to that location, I mean, nowadays it's an hour or so hike into the woods in California to get to the actual Patterson-Gimlin film site. But that's after taking a several-hour car ride deeper into the remote wilderness. And that is actually where the first video evidence of Bigfoot was taken. But for the ranchers that were there that day taking the actual film, they were out in the wilderness for much longer. So you have to think that some of these things that people are seeing is so remote to get there and to actually prove things exist or to be at the right place at the right time for, even tiny insects. We're talking like it's kind of tough. It's not like you go out to this one spot in the forest and you're like, yep, Bigfoot's going to be here. No, that's not how it is. And I always talk about this, like, if something's living out there, like let's say Bigfoot, and if something has been living out in the wilderness and it knows the area way better than we do, right? Because it's been living there its entire life. It's not distracted by technology. It's not distracted by TV. It's not distracted by their cell phone. They're so aware of their surroundings. So they know and can sense when something isn't where it's supposed to be. And it's like you can always tell when there's a predator nearby, right? Okay, so there was a bald eagle in my yard the other day, and everything from squirrels to birds were like cawing, trying to send out their warning signals. Same thing there. So like if someone's going out to search for Bigfoot, Bigfoot is way more aware of what's going on in its environment than you are going into its environment. So just think about how remote that film site was. I mean, to drive your car hours and hours into the wilderness just to get close to the turnoff for the 1 hour hike to get to the actual film site. That's pretty remote. And that's why I think, to me, it's like you have to put yourself in this mindset that like maybe there's some things that we just haven't, like especially the ocean, we just haven't had the technology or the patience to go out and find it. But with that being said, there are so many new species being found, even daily. I think I read recently about this like new type of pelican spider that they found. And I also read a report where 740 species have been discovered in the Congo Basin alone over the past decade. So, that's the same area of the giant Congolese man-eating spider, the Chiba. That's where it's said to burrow. So I'm just saying we need to prove it exists or doesn't. I don't know. But there's thousands of new species being identified every year. But I really think what this tells us is as humans at the top of the food chain, well, in most scenarios, we have a duty to not only find these new species, but also to protect them. To me, it's more of a shame when a species goes on the endangered list, knowing that we as humans have so many resources and technology to keep that from happening. However, with that being said, there are so many great people and causes out there protecting endangered wildlife and habitats and doing the work to protect these species of the world. So my hat is tipped to you fine people. But that's also why it is very important to talk about cryptids, and sparking the love for animals and conservation is so important. And, whether or not you truly believe a Bigfoot or the Loch Ness Monster could truly exist or not, some of these very animals today were once thought to be a hoax or a myth. And some people thought people were out of their minds with these stories of encounters of these cryptids, or that people thought they misidentified a different species. But those animals ended up being real. So I think that's why having a safe space for openness, for communication, and hearing people's stories in this field is so important. Having people feel safe enough to tell their stories or encounters without them being dismissed, like some of the locals had their stories dismissed by explorers when it came to these cryptids or stories. It's important. It's very important to have a safe space. So that is why I will always encourage everyone to always be open with me. Tell me your encounters, tell me your stories, whether it's paranormal, whether it's with cryptids. I'm always a safe space for everybody and their stories. And I think that that's very, very important to know. But that's also why I enjoyed CryptidCon, because like I said, I had people coming up and talking to me about their stories, and just knowing that it's like a safe space, and knowing that people can share their ideas and share their encounters and not feel like people are going to look at them a certain way or judge them. That's important. So Camp Cryptid is always a safe space, and I will always be here for y'all, especially when you have these encounters that you have to talk about. So yeah, that is my list of cryptids that were, animals that were once on the cryptid list, but are not anymore. So we have some cool ones: kangaroo, Komodo dragon, giant squid, gorillas, platypus. I mean, come on. It's like so crazy to me to think that like some of these things, like I've been around since 1985, right? So to think of things like gorillas once being a cryptid, it's like, what? That's a gorilla. But it's like so weird to like show the parallels between like people's stories and local stories talking about these things that they had witnessed, and people like, oh no, I'm not going to believe that until a scientist comes. But it's like people's preservation of like proving that it exists is what's really, really important. So hopefully I inspire some of you to go out there and do some conservation, or, research some of these cryptids and prove their existence so we can, do what we can to protect them. But yeah, that is my little list of cryptids. Now, lately, I have not had a lot of time to watch a lot of things, and I've been kind of like with the holidays and having family over and then catching up on stuff. And then we rounded off the Cryptid Camp TCG Kickstarter this past week. It has been a busy time for me. So that maybe that's why time is flying. But I did get the chance to catch up on Creep Tapes, which I've talked about the past couple episodes. I really have a lot of fun watching them. When you watch them, you just realize if you watch them, but how much of a troll he is. It's pretty entertaining. I really, really enjoy it. But other than that, I have been watching Dexter with my husband, because y'all know I'm a huge Dexter fan. And with Original Sin coming out soon, and then Resurrection coming out soon, I was like, I really want to go back through and kind of rewatch things while I'm like doing work and just have it on in the background. And so we've been doing that to kind of prepare. So we finished up the series, and now we're going to be starting New Blood to finish that up, because now I'm like, okay, how are they going to switch this off? So I'm going to do my little detective work on that one. And I don't think I talked about this last episode, but I also finally got to catch up on Alien Romulus, which kicked ass. Okay. It kicked so much ass. It was so good. I was on the edge of my seat. I think there were great tributes to the Alien franchise, and I just thought I loved everything about it. And I really want to see what they do next with it, because that was so awesome. I love practical effects. Hell yeah to practical effects all my life. Hands down, so good. But yeah, that is what I've been watching recently. Like I said, I haven't had much time. I did play a little bit of Warcraft the other day too, to get caught up on stuff, but especially for the 20th anniversary. Come on, I had to. But yeah. Now, there are some things that I cannot wait to see in theaters, like Heretic, Nosferatu, and Werewolves. Y'all know I'm a huge werewolf fan, like through and through. Like, I love werewolves. They are one of my favorite cryptids, mythological beings, like movie topics. Everything werewolves. I've literally seen every werewolf movie I can think of. I'm obsessed. But with that being said, I cannot wait to see this werewolves movie. I've been seeing some of the effects they're using, some of the costuming. It looks so good. I cannot wait to watch it. But yeah, so those are my 3 that I cannot wait to watch. I hate that Nosferatu is coming out on the 25th because I have to wait so long. What's that about? But yeah, no, I'm excited. I think that 2025, especially with this year being a great year for horror, I cannot wait to see what's coming in 2025. And fingers crossed, because I've had a lot of you ask about a Gettysburg haunting. So I will have some good news about that coming soon, some updates, and let's keep fingers crossed for some 2025 goodness with a Gettysburg haunting too. But yeah. With that being said, if y'all like the topic that the patrons picked out today, make sure to go over to Patreon and sign up for my Patreon, the Camp Cryptid Patreon, for free. It's completely free to be a member. I do have a couple tiers that if you feel like you want to be on the sticker club or, the early access tier, you totally can. But other than that, completely free. And then when I do these little polls about, getting topics for next episodes, you can chime in with some topics you'd like to hear about. Also, with that being said, if you're liking what you're hearing, make sure to go to Spotify or Apple and leave me a review. I get so excited when I see new reviews, so thank you. I also get very excited when I see comments left on Spotify, so thanks, y'all rock. I get so excited, I'm like, oh, y'all are listening, thanks. But yeah, with that being said, I hope everybody is having a cozy little winter so far. I can't believe, like I said earlier in the episode, I can't believe it's already December. Like, what the heck? I'm trying to get a little list of episodes that I want to do this month, and I thought with Nosferatu coming out, it might be a good time to do a vampire episode. I'll also be doing a Christmas episode as well. And then I'll be doing my top thrillers, sci-fi, and horror movies of 2024 review. So I got a couple movies I still have to catch up on. So I got some stuff to do. I got some homework, y'all. But yeah, with that being said, I hope you all are staying cozy inside. It's kind of chilly outside here, and I got my heat on 24/7. And I'm like, winter is coming, right, y'all? And also, if you're in the Columbus, Ohio area this weekend, the 7th, in Columbus, Ohio, there's going to be the Merry Krampus. And it's a little holiday market full of a lot of spooky little vendors and artists. And it's going to be held in the Key. And I'm going to be there. So if you're in the area, make sure to stop by. I'll make sure to post it on my Instagram story for both my main Instagram and the Camp Cryptid Instagram. So you guys can all see the location and information. But yeah, make sure to stop by and say hi. I'll have some stickers and little free stickers and some goodies for y'all. So I can't wait. But yeah, other than that, I want to say happy December to everyone. I really hope that it is an amazing month. You're staying warm and cozy. You're getting lots of good food, lots of good snacks, some apple cider. And now I want apple cider. But yeah, thanks again so much for hanging out for another episode. I just adore y'all, and you're the best campers in the world. So thank you. And hey, until next time, take care.